Crash Law 24 sponsors GBNews Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M8 eastbound exit slip to the A804 is closed due to roadworks. Road users should follow signed diversions. On the M602 eastbound between junctions 2 and 3, a collision has led to a lane closure, causing a 40-minute delay. On the M6 northbound between junctions 3 and 3A, 2 lanes are blocked due to a road incident, leading to delays. In West Sussex, the A27 westbound has 10-minute delays between the A2025 and the junction with the A24 south due to congestion. And on the trains, C2C and cross-country services are experiencing disruptions. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GBNews Traffic and Travel Report.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Very good morning to you. And if you're planning to visit one of Britain's many beauty spots next bank holiday or Easter weekend, beware of your car.
Yeah, a rising number of tourist attractions are banning coaches and some cars to help ease overcrowding.
We're here to debate if vehicles should be stopped from parking near attractions. Government Relations Manager at the Countryside Alliance, David Bean, and founder of Fair Fuel UK campaign, Howard Cox. Good morning to you both.
David, how much of a problem are tourists when there are too many of them and they bring their great camper vans and they park all their cars in a line so you actually can't see the beauty spot you went to see? How much of a problem is it?
It can be a significant problem in certain areas. I'm in Scotland for the holidays, and particularly in areas such as the Highlands and Islands, there are areas that have very, very badly been affected. Even some camper vans end up getting taken out to certain places on the islands and then just abandoned after a holiday is finished.
Honestly, this is horses for courses, and to be fair, you know, I actually do believe that we need better signage, better planning, and Cameron hit the nail on the head. You can't get to these beauty spots unless you have some sort of transport to get there. And, you know, public transport is woeful across the country in these areas. Obviously, yesterday in the Berlin Gap one, you can't legislate for idiots. It needs better signage, better information, but if you take people away from it, you take income away from the community. You know, I think any organisation that's promoting a beauty spot that's making money out of it should be paying for better signage, better parking facilities, etc. I do not like the idea of cars being, you know, queuing up illegally, you could say. That's ridiculous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Tuesday the 13th of May, live across the United Kingdom. Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Nana Akua.
Good morning to you. So, house fire arrest. A 21-year-old man is arrested on suspicion of arson after a fire broke out at the Prime Minister's home. Does more need to be done to protect our politicians?
Well, of course, dramatic developments this morning, not just news of the arrest, but the confirmation from the police that they're now investigating 3 arson attacks.
NHS spy scales obese children's weight will be monitored remotely, but they'll never see their weight and will be given feedback instead from doctors. Is this a big help or an invasion of privacy?
Substation fire chaos. London grinds to a halt yesterday as the transport network was crippled by a fire. We'll look at why these incidents are happening more often.
And Peter Sullivan murder appeal. The man who's been in jail for murder for 38 years will today find out if his conviction will be quashed at the Court of Appeal as new evidence has come to light.
We risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together.
Disorder at the border. 600 Channel migrants arrived to Britain in 24 hours, all whilst the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, announces sweeping reforms to cut immigration levels.
So, do pets outrank partners? Cats and dogs are the ultimate emotional support, beating spouses, children and friends. Do you agree with that?
you have any pets?
I've got two, Rosie and Minnie, two moggies.
The little cats?
Yeah, they're not so little, actually.
Oh, are they quite old? Or?
They're about 13. They're predatory.
Oh.
They're killers. Kill cats. They kill mice, birds.
Oh,
they don't
really?
care. And they bring the trophy to Dad as a present.
Oh, that's so cute. But are they cuddly? Are they the nice ones?
Yeah.
Do they scratch leather?
They're not allowed to scratch anything. Especially me.
Do you have pets at home? You know, do you agree that sometimes pets can outrank people?
Exactly. Send your views, send your photographs of them too. Post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/you'll say. But first, here's the news with
Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, Andrew, thank you very much. The top stories. Police have arrested a man over suspected arson attacks on properties linked to the Prime Minister. The 21-year-old was arrested in the early hours of this morning on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life. The arrest follows a fire at the Prime Minister's private home in North London in the early hours of yesterday. On Sunday, emergency services were called to a small fire at the front door of a house converted into flats in Islington, a property also linked to the Prime Minister. One person was assisted to safety via an internal staircase by firefighters. Police are also looking at a car fire as part of the investigation. Counter-terrorism police are leading the probe and are treating the fires as suspicious and investigating whether they are linked. Elsewhere, US President Donald Trump has arrived in Saudi Arabia for the first major diplomatic trip of his second term and has been greeted by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Donald Trump is expected to look for new economic agreements in the Middle East. He'll visit Riyadh, Doha and Abu Dhabi, which will last throughout the week. The US leader wants to focus on big deals and investments, but the region is not what it was 8 years ago when Mr. Trump last visited, with a lot of focus now on the war in Gaza. The trip comes after his officials in China agreed to slash tariffs in a de-escalation of their trade war. And wage growth has eased back while Britain's unemployment rate has hit a near four-year high as the UK jobs market falters amid worries over the impact of soaring employee costs for companies. The Office for National Statistics says the latest official figures showed further signs of a cooling labour market, with average regular earnings growth falling to 5.6% in the first 3 months of March. This is down from 5.9% in the previous 3 months and the lowest level since the 3 months to November last year. But wages still outstripped inflation, rising by 2.6% higher after taking consumer prices index inflation into account. The ONS said the rate of unemployment rose to 4.5% in the quarter to March, up from 4.4% in the 3 months to February and the highest since June to August 2021. And those are the latest headlines. For now, more from me at 10 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome. Britain's Newsroom live across the UK on GB News with Andrew Pearce. And look who's here, the lovely Nana Aquia.
No, I'm in for Bev Turner this morning. Now, we've had some very exciting news. Buckingham Palace has announced that the King is to host French President Emmanuel Macron on a state visit to the UK next month.
How do you think Donald Trump's going to feel about that? Because we think he's coming in September, which means Macron's beaten him to it.
Well, and Zelensky beat him to it, really, as well.
Yeah, and he's not. I don't think he's a great fan of Macron's.
No, I don't think he is.
Fascinating, isn't it? Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker's here. So this has just broken in the last few minutes.
It has. Buckingham Palace has announced in the last few minutes, and you're right, this is likely to supersede Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that's going down in the White House. President Trump saying that state visit expected in September. The French president will be here at Windsor Castle, actually, between the 8th of July and the 10th of July, so around 8 weeks' time. The reason it's happening at Windsor Castle is because Buckingham Palace is being resurfaced, which means the state ballroom cannot be used for this magnificent state banquet, because, of course, the whole point of a state visit is to shore up relations between two nations. It will be on the advice of Sir Keir Starmer and the British government that the King has invited President Macron to the United Kingdom. So the King will kind of butter him up, essentially, at Windsor Castle, pulling out all the bells and whistles, a ceremonial welcome inside the upper ward. for the tough political negotiations to take place inside Downing Street. I suspect maybe this could be an opportunity for them to discuss the French border force and stopping the small boats. They could talk about trade with the EU, the Prime Minister this is, and of course joint law enforcement as well. But of course the King is very much going to be wielding his soft power in this instance. He won't get involved in those tough political negotiations. That is down to Keir Starmer and President Macron.
It's an interesting time because Macron's second term comes to an end in 2027, so in a sense he's almost a lame duck president.
But he is still the president of France, and I think that will be what Keir Starmer is very mindful of when he asked the King to invite him for a state visit. Also, very interestingly, the president's actually going to be staying inside Windsor Castle, so he's not going to be staying at the French ambassador's residence. He is going to be staying overnight in a royal residence for 2 nights, which hasn't really happened in recent history, I suspect, because Buckingham Palace, as I said, is undergoing this resurfacing programme. And then we have to look across to September. Will President Trump be given that honour as well, staying inside Windsor Castle? I suspect he probably won't for security reasons, because he usually stays in the US ambassador's residence. However, the late Queen famously said, I think it was the President Ronald Reagan, that when they were looking at the security of Windsor Castle and all the Secret Service swarming around the building, she said, well, if it's good enough for me, then it should be good enough for the United States President. So yes, and this, of course, this is quite significant actually, because the last incoming French state visit was back in 2008, so before Brexit, way before Brexit, with Nicolas Sarkozy when he was president at the time. So it will be interesting to see how in this post-Brexit world, how this state visit goes down.
And Macron and Starmer have worked quite closely on what they called the coalition of the willing, he was talking about potentially putting British troops on the ground in Ukraine, and Macron was his sort of senior partner in those talks. They are quite close.
Absolutely, and we have seen in the last couple of days, haven't we, them on the train to go and visit President Zelensky as well. And as you say, the coalition of the willing, are we going to see troops, peacekeeping troops as they're being dubbed, on the ground in Ukraine if this ceasefire ever takes hold, if the war ever ends? We'll have to wait and see.
Fascinating.
All right, Cameron Walker, thank you very much. Now, we've had some breaking news. French actor Gerard Depardieu has been found guilty of sexual assault by a court in Paris. He has been handed an 18-month suspended prison sentence. We'll have more on that story throughout the show.
Fascinating. Now, police have also, in here, arrested a man on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life after fires at homes linked to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer.
Now, the 21-year-old was arrested in the early hours this morning and he remains in custody.
It follows that fire at the Prime Minister's private home in Kentish Town in North London, which he's rented out because, of course, the family obviously live in number 10. But should Prime Ministers have other properties when they live in number 10? Thatcher, when she became Prime Minister in 79, sold the house in Flood Street. Tony Blair, he regretted it, sold the house in Islington. He sold it for $650,000. When he left office 10 years later, it was worth about £3 million. So he was very fed up about it. But Cameron kept his house in Notting Hill. But if you were a neighbour in the Prime Minister's street, you can be very anxious about this after this firebomb or whatever happened at that property.
Also, who would rent a property from a Prime Minister, you know, knowing the sort of security risks? GBNews' Home and Security editor, Mark White, joins us now. Mark, what can you tell us?
Well, dramatic and fast-moving events and worrying events, of course, with the confirmation now that the police are investigating, led by Counter-Terrorism Command, 3 separate arson attacks. 2 that took place in this street in Kentish Town, 1 at the house of the Prime Minister behind me, the entrance to that house, and I think we've got some shots we can show you of some quite bad fire damage to the front of that building as some kind of inflammatory device was thrown at that front entrance there. We understand 1 person inside the building had to be led to safety through an internal staircase. And just a bit further down the street, actually, there are scorch marks on the road from a vehicle fire that took place last Thursday in this street, and neighbours that we've been speaking to said that the vehicle that appears to have been targeted was very similar to a vehicle that the Prime Minister drove around here when he was resident in this street. And then that third incident, which happened just the day before the fire here in Kentish Town, that at a property in Islington, again linked to the Prime Minister. So clearly very worrying developments. The Metropolitan Police confirming that a 21-year-old man was detained in the early hours of this morning and is being questioned by detectives. We've had reaction now from the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch. She says, "This is a shocking incident. My thoughts are with the Prime Minister and his family. No one should face these sorts of threats, let alone people in public service. It's an attack on our democracy and must never be tolerated." That from the leader of the opposition, as of course politicians of all parties absorb what has gone on here, this incident or set of incidents that appeared to target properties linked to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mark. That's Mark White, our Home Security. Well, let's talk to the Government Security Advisor, Chris Phillips. Chris, morning to you. This is problematic, isn't it, for anyone who lives in the same street as a Prime Minister's home, where a Prime Minister's home is. If you're a neighbour, you're going to be feeling very anxious. Should there be a police presence by that house, which presumably the taxpayer would have to pay for, or should a Prime Minister, when they move into number 10, give up the property?
Why are you focusing on Prime Ministers? Simply because this happened at Keir Starmer's house. It could be any minister, any MP. We live in a free, open, democratic society, and it's impossible to secure every building, particularly when the subject isn't going to be there. So I think it's an impossible wish. We have to be sensible about this. This is a bit of a one-off, but we've seen it. We have seen it before. You know, Joe Cox was murdered, unfortunately, and David Amos was attacked. So MPs themselves are at risk. To some extent, the police and security services do a lot of work with MPs, with Prime Ministers to keep them safe. But you can't look after all properties that they may or may not own.
Yeah, it's quite frightening, actually. I don't know who would want to be an MP, but it begs the question, if they do have these properties all over, how can they, if there's any way, how can they be secured, really and truthfully?
Well, I mean, there are security measures in place, and I'm sure that there were security measures that will probably go a long way to have caught this guy, whether it's CCTV cameras, whether it's extra locks and bolts and things on the doors. And, of course, the local people who know that it is a slightly delicate house, if you like, will have helped to apprehend this man. But we mustn't fool ourselves. You know, the crime happens, and unfortunately, this is just one of those bits of society that we don't like, but we have to put up with to some extent.
And of course, there was a big debate, Chris, after David Amos was murdered in his constituency office while he was doing the surgery, as to whether there should be police people outside, or whether they should even stop doing face-to-face meetings between MPs and constituents, whether it should all be done on Zoom. But every MP I spoke to said, no, we can't go down that route, because it's very important that we meet the public, we meet our voters, our constituents face-to-face.
Yeah, it's important we don't overreact to individual situations. I mean, this was a house that's had a bit of charring on it. I don't think it's a huge amount of damage that's been done. Someone was clearly trying to make a point, and they've done that, and they will probably pay with their liberty. We do have to be open. We have to say that you can't protect every building. You know, we've just got to make sure that people are aware, alert, and particularly those that live near properties that are owned by members of Parliament and local councillors as well, let's not forget, to make sure that they're alert, and if they see anything suspicious, they report it to police.
Absolutely.
All right, Chris Phillips, thank you very much. I think the moral of that is don't rent a property that's formerly owned by a Prime Minister.
Owned by a Prime Minister. Do you know, back in 2010, the bill for protecting Tony Blair's property, this one in central London, was £250,000 a year.
Wow.
and now he's got at least 2 properties. I should think it's $500,000 a year. It's a lot of money, isn't it?
Well, the taxpayer has to pay for that.
Taxpayer has to pay for that, and then he's got his protection retinue that follows him all around the world, and will do for the rest of his life.
Maybe
same with Theresa May. Same for all forms.
They could have one property protected, but I don't see why we should pay for numerous ones if they have loads and loads of homes.
Particularly if you're very wealthy, like Tony Blair.
Well, exactly. He can pay for it himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, still ahead.
A murder case that could be the UK's longest-running miscarriage of justice. It's been considered at the Court of Appeal this morning. Peter Sullivan has spent 38 years in prison.
And up next, the NHS is rolling up what they call so-called spy scales to remotely monitor the weight of obese children. We're asking, what are Mum and Dad doing?
But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here is the forecast of some of the top European destinations.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello. Some heavy showers through this week over central parts of the Mediterranean, affecting Sicily, Sardinia and also at times the Balearics. Things have cooled off a little bit across Greece and Turkey. The wind's coming down from the north, but plenty of fine spring sunshine over the Greek islands through Wednesday. There are the showers drifting northwards, affecting Sardinia and increasingly over Mallorca and Minorca. Plenty of sunshine, though, for the Canaries. Sunny skies, too, across the Algarve. Heavy showers inland across northern Spain should ease later this week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Say that Mia Collins joins us in the studio now. Morning, Mia. Really good to meet you. And what's it like for you watching that experience back?
Lots of fond memories. I loved my time in the process, and you know, TV shopping was definitely one of the big highlights for me. I loved it.
Really?
Genuinely, I really enjoyed it.
Because I wonder how much of these challenges and tasks do you come away from thinking, oh, that was awful?
For me personally, there weren't many occasions where I thought, oh God, you know, what I've been able to do now is look back on all 10 episodes, and I'm actually really happy with my performance, so no regrets.
You're consistently strong.
Thank you.
That's why I was so shocked when you went out as number 6. I honestly thought you'd make it through to the final, but it was just that one mistake, wasn't it?
It was the wrong decision at the wrong time. Had it been another task, maybe I would have survived it through, but, you know, it's so difficult to get to that final 5, and Jordan and Anissa are really strong candidates, so I think I just drew the short straw.
I mean, did you go into it thinking this would help you as a business person, or is it a door to get into media, or I mean, what was the point of going on?
I think if you look at the kind of the general age of candidates nowadays, it's a younger audience, and I've grown up watching the show. So from my perspective, I'd always just grown up watching it, thinking, God, I really do think I could do that. I am in the midst of prep for my bodybuilding competitions, so my time is very centred around training and trying to get as much content and insight into that as much as I can. I think bodybuilding is one of those sports that not many people know all too much about, and I think there's a few misconceptions of it. So if I can educate people and bring correct information about the sport through means that I enjoy, then so be it. And whatever comes of it, comes of it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It is 51 minutes after 9 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Now, the NHS are rolling out what they call spy scales, which remotely monitor children at home, so medics can get in touch if they put on too much weight.
Health writer and commentator Roy Lilly joins us now. Roy, so give us a little bit of detail about what this is and what you think about it.
Well, good morning, both. I just looked up some numbers before it came on. You know, if we turn this around, and you said to me this morning, childhood obesity, if we could get it back to 1980s levels, we'd save the NHS 66 billion. Or if you said to me the lifetime costs of obese children run at about 37 billion, the next question will be, well, what is the NHS going to do about it? And that's the problem the NHS has. It really doesn't have a mandate for public health. Public health was moved from the NHS by Andrew Lansley back in 2012 into local authorities. The budget didn't come with them. They don't have the influence that they've got, and local authorities are struggling with potholes and care packages for older people. So we have to do something, because these costs, the lifetime costs for obese children, are horrendous. And it's pretty much true that, you know, what you are when you're 6 or 7 years old will come with you into the rest of your life. So trying to reduce the weight of young children is really very important, and it's in the NHS's own self-interests to try and do this, to save itself money in the future. So that's the background. As far as this is concerned, well, I don't know, it looks kind of gimmicky. It looks like Big Brother looking after Little Brother, and not making a big thing of weighing the kids, because, you know, kids are very sensitive to this. In the playground, you know, you get like fat kids, fatso, and they get horrendous abuse in the playground. No one wants to tag them with that. If this is a way of watching their weight, rewarding them, focusing on it, well, good enough. Before the break, you asked the question, what are the parents doing? And that's the key question. And it has to be said that the incidence of obesity is much higher in areas of social deprivation. And there is a clear link with that. So we'd have to sort this out as well. I mean, fat kids, obese children, are really emblematic of what is happening in society and how we're bringing our kids up and what we eat and the junk food that we eat. That's the difficulty. That's the background. That's my view. I think this is a bit of a gimmick probably, but if it helps, listen, let's do it.
All right, Roy Lilly, thank you very much. He's a health writer and a commentator. It's interesting, isn't it?
I think they should tell the kids what weight they are.
Tell them that they're fat. They need to know.
They do.
Of course they do. Well, listen, stay with us. Plenty more to come. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Let's get some weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another day where most places will be fine and sunny. But like yesterday, we are expecting a few heavy showers and even the odd thunderstorm to break out this afternoon. It is quite cloudy around some of the coast across northern and eastern Scotland. That ha could stick around for a good chunk of the day. For most places, it's a fine blue sky kind of morning. By late morning into the early afternoon, this zone here could well be seeing some heavy and perhaps even thundery showers as far east as Sussex. The heaviest ones most likely South Wales, around Bristol, Gloucestershire and Somerset. But they'll be very hit and miss, many places avoiding them. Feeling warmer in the sunshine with temperatures getting into the low 20s, perhaps into the mid 20s in one or two locations. As I said, these showers will be hit and miss, but where they do occur, they could drop a lot of rain in a short space of time. A lot of spray and surface water in parts of the M4 and the M5 potentially for this evening's rush hour. The vast majority dry, fine, sunny and pretty warm. Always cooler on some of these coasts and particularly fresh if this mist and low cloud does stick around, as it could do on some of the coasts Across northeastern Scotland, temperatures may struggle to get much above 11 or 12 Celsius. And it's likely to move back inland through this evening as well. The showers in the southwest, well, they should fade away. Still a possibility of 1 or 2 over the Channel Islands. They could just return north back into parts of Devon and Cornwall through the early hours. But most of us having a dry night, temperatures dipping down into single digits for the vast majority. And that mist and low clouds still around on Wednesday, perhaps a little further inland over parts of northern England tomorrow morning, gradually burning back to the coast. The chance of 1 or 2 showers for Devon and Cornwall, the Isles of Scilly early doors, but again, they should scoot away. And for most places, it's another cracking day tomorrow. Plenty of sunshine, fine conditions. Again, that breeze picking up, so that'll keep things fresh on some North Sea coast, but warm enough where we see some sunshine over many central and western parts.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The eastbound M8 at junction 18 exit slip to the A804 is closed for roadworks. Diversions are increasing travel times. The M4 westbound at junction 38 Margam has resurfacing work, closing the exit slip and hard shoulder. On the M602 eastbound between junctions 2 and 3, a collision closes one lane, causing a 40-minute delay. Warwickshire's M6 northbound between junctions 3 and 4 has a lane closure due to an incident. The M5 southbound between junctions 18 and 19 faces a 10-minute delay after a collision. And on the trains, expect disruption on C2C routes and between Newcastle and Darlington on cross-country. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
What does it feel like to be a Great British Giveaway winner?
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
Yes, that is fantastic.
You know, you have no idea how much I needed it. Oh my goodness.
That's wonderful. Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I was gobsmacked. Thank you, GB News.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
You really could be our next big winner. Head over to gbnews.com/win now to find out how and get your entry for the Great British Giveaway. Great prizes, even greater wins.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock. It is Tuesday, the 13th of May. We're live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and me, Nana Acquia.
House fire arrest. Drama. A 21-year-old man is arrested on suspicion of arson after a fire broke out at the Prime Minister's London home.
Well, the Metropolitan Police now confirming that 3 separate incidents are being treated as arson attacks.
Spy scales. Obese children's weight will be monitored remotely, but they'll never see their weight and will be given feedback from doctors. What are parents doing?
Bonjour, Mr. Macron. King Charles is set to host French President Emmanuel Macron in a state visit to the United Kingdom in July, which means he gets here before Donald Trump does.
Another substation fire, chaos, but this time it is, of course, London Underground. London is grinds to a halt yesterday as the transport network was crippled by a fire. We'll look at why these incidents are happening more often.
The Peter Sullivan murder appeal. The man who's been in jail for murder for 38 years will today find out if his conviction is going to be quashed at the Court of Appeal after new evidence came to light.
We risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together.
Disorder at the border. 600 Channel migrants arrive in Britain in 24 hours, all whilst the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, announces sweeping reforms to cut immigration levels.
And Trump snubs the EU. The US president praises the trade deal with Britain as he calls the European bloc nastier than China. But there could be a sting in the tail when it comes to our own pharmaceuticals industry.
France's biggest movie star, Gerard Depardieu, found guilty of sexual assault in a case that's set to overshadow the Cannes Film Festival, which begins today.
And we love this story. Pets apparently outrank partners. Cats and dogs are the ultimate emotional support, beating spouses, children and friends. Do you agree with that?
Oh, just look at that little cat at the end there with his little eyes.
Are you tempted?
Do you know, I wouldn't mind a little dog. And this lady, the other day I went to this thing and she gave me her little dog. It was tiny. It was like you could carry it and everything. So she said, oh, you hold it for a bit. It was tiny and it was shaking and it was looking up. And God, did it smell.
Oh.
I thought, oh, my God.
Dear
this thing
me.
is cute, but it stinks.
Not
It
that
stank
cute
of-
if it smells.
Obviously, and I realised my hand was on its belly.
Oh,
no! Get me out of here! So I kind of want them, the reality sets in and it sort of puts me off.
I think it probably would have, that would put me off. What do you think? We'd love to know. Do your pets come before your other half? Send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you. The top stories. Police have arrested a man over suspected arson attacks on properties linked to the Prime Minister. The 21-year-old was arrested in the early hours of this morning on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life. The arrest follows a fire at the Prime Minister's private home in North London in the early hours of yesterday. On Sunday, emergency services were called to a small fire at the front door of a house converted into flats in Islington, a property also linked to the Prime Minister. One person was assisted to safety via an internal staircase by firefighters. Police are also looking at a car fire as part of the investigation. Counter-terrorism police are leading the probe and are treating the fires as suspicious and investigating whether they are linked. Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, has condemned these suspected arson attacks. US President Donald Trump has arrived in Saudi Arabia for the first major diplomatic trip of his second term and has been greeted by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Donald Trump is expected to look for new economic agreements in the Middle East. He'll visit Riyadh, Doha and Abu Dhabi, which will last throughout the week. The US leader wants to focus on big deals and investments, but the region is not what it was 8 years ago when Mr. Trump last visited, with a lot of focus now on the war in Gaza. The trip comes after his officials and China agreed to slash tariffs in a de-escalation of their trade war. Buckingham Palace has announced that the King is to host French President Emmanuel Macron on a state visit to the UK next month. Macron will visit from the 8th until the 10th of July. The palace has added the President and Mrs Macron will stay at Windsor Castle. The King and Queen paid a state visit to France in September of 2023, and the last state visit to the UK from France was in March 2008. Meanwhile, French actor Gerard Depardieu has been found guilty of sexually assaulting 2 women. The 76-year-old, who's appeared in more than 200 movies, was convicted by a court in Paris of groping the women during the filming of the 2021 film Les Vols Verts. Both of his victims had been working on the film in the behind-the-scenes roles. They claimed they were scared to speak out at the time and intimidated by him. Depardieu had denied the allegations and had received support from many actors, directors and even at one point the French president, who'd previously described the actor as the pride of France. Elsewhere, the Prime Minister faces criticism after unveiling his government's plan to cut net migration yesterday. The Labour government announced sweeping reforms of the immigration system, promising to take back control of the UK's borders. The plans, which are expected to reduce the number of people coming to the UK by up to 100,000 per year, include study visas and requiring a higher level of English across all immigration routes. But the proposal sparked concern from employers, particularly in the healthcare sector, following the announcement that care worker visas would be scrapped. Meanwhile, GB News can reveal around 600 small boat migrants arrived in the UK yesterday, causing fresh pressure on the Prime Minister. A man jailed for murder nearly 40 years ago could have his conviction quashed by the Court of Appeal today, ending what's thought to be the longest-running miscarriage of justice in British history. Peter Sullivan was convicted of murdering Diane Sindel in Birkenhead in August 1986. The 21-year-old florist had been beaten and raped and left in an alleyway. Mr. Sullivan has always maintained his innocence, and new tests ordered by the Criminal Cases Review Commission have revealed his DNA was not present on samples preserved at the time. Merseyside police have confirmed detectives are now carrying out an extensive investigation in a bid to identify who the new DNA profile belongs to, as to date there is no match on the national DNA database. Elsewhere, wage growth has eased back while Britain's unemployment rate has hit a near 4-year high as the UK jobs market falters amid worrying over the impact of soaring employee costs for companies. The Office for National Statistics says the latest figures show further signs of a cooling labour market, with average regular earnings growth falling to 5.6% in the 3 months to March. This is down from 5.9% in the previous 3 months and the lowest level since the 3 months to November 2024. But wages still outstripped inflation, rising by 2.6% higher after taking consumer prices index inflation into account. The ONS said the rate of unemployment rose to 4.5% in the quarter to March, and that's the highest since June to August 2021. And finally, in sport, Andy Murray will no longer be working as Novak Djokovic's tennis coach. The decision, said to be by mutual agreement, means Murray will not be by Djokovic's side when he chases an 8th Wimbledon title in July. Novak Djokovic, a 24-time Grand Slam champion, joined forces with Murray in November. And under Murray, the Serb reached the semi-finals of the Australian Open, ultimately retiring injured after losing the first set. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me in half an hour.
Well, good morning, hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and me, Nana Akua, in for Bev Turner. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts, and it's interesting that the topic that seemed to spark a lot of conversation was the one about the scales. So Lulu says, spy scales, I've heard it all now. And then Wills says, you don't get obese by having little money to spend on food. Because people often say, oh, it's a poverty thing, it's all linked with poverty. I think it's more to do with what they're eating.
Exactly.
But also...
a lot of processed food.
A lot of processed stuff. And
lack of exercise.
No, not much exercise. But then, again, you still have to eat quite a bit of it to get overweight. So I kind of...
near here, I see a lot of school kids walking past this building in the morning. A lot of them are fat. And they've got cans of fizz filling their face on the way to school. Why are they eating on the way to school? Didn't they have their breakfast?
Some of them don't. You know, my daughter doesn't eat breakfast. I said, what's wrong with you? Why do you not eat breakfast? She goes, oh, you know, I just ain't got room for it right now. I'm not ready to eat.
Don't you make her?
No, I don't make her. She's 16. She's not going to listen to me.
Right.
I can't. She won't even let me in her bedroom. I have to go to her room. I knock on the door. I say, can I come in? She goes, no. and I do a little cute voice to see if that works. Doesn't work, never has. Anyway,
Joys of parenthood. Who'd have thought it?
Great. Now, Grumpy Grandad, he's talking about John. He said, one of my kids is overweight. I don't pull punches with him. I tell him straight, you're too fat and you need to lose weight, because that's the truth. He wouldn't want me to be any other way with him because he knows I'm right, and I'm only telling him out of concern.
I think you should give us your cute voice.
What, my cute voice? Please, can I come in? I'm Mummy.
No wonder she doesn't let you in.
Like some creepy thing from The Ring or something that's coming into a room. And I'm just going to quickly read this one because I thought it was quite interesting, and it wasn't just based on food, which is why I quite like it. It was Gary. Gary said, dogs smell, cats don't. Cats have a mild antiseptic in their saliva. That's according to a vet I know. So nearly always, their fur smells sweet.
My girls, the girl, I call them the girls.
It's girls.
I call them girls. They're lovely.
Do they?
Yeah. Apart from when they go do their killing fields.
Oh, when they bring you back stuff, though. It's because they love you.
Mice, a rat, 2 foxes. Not foxes, 2 squirrels.
2 foxes. Fox is probably a bit too big for them.
Yeah, they try. They would try. Now, moving on. Police have arrested a man on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life after fires at homes linked to the Prime Minister.
Now, the 21-year-old was arrested in the early hours this morning and he remains in custody. GB News' Home and Security editor Mark White joins us now. Mark, what more can you tell us?
Well, this investigation is still being led by Counter-Terror Command, and now the confirmation not just of the arrest of a 21-year-old suspect, but the fact that they are describing these fires as arson attacks and linking 3 separate fires. The fire, of course, that we knew about yesterday afternoon when the news emerged of a fire that had occurred in the early hours of yesterday morning at the entrance to the home of Sir Keir Starmer. He no longer, of course, lives here at the moment. While he's in office, he's resident at Downing Street, but we understand that the property is rented out to tenants in the meantime, and that when this fire broke out, that one of those individuals had to be led to safety through an internal staircase. Quite a bit of obvious fire damage to the entrance of this building. But when we look further down the street as well, there is fire damage on the roadway. That was from a vehicle that was apparently targeted last Thursday. And then a similar incident to the house fire here in a property in Islington. That was on Sunday, just a day before this suspected firebomb attack. And again, that incident targeted the front entrance to that building. And it is a building as well that has been described as being linked to the Prime Minister. So clearly a lot of concern for the Prime Minister, who has thanked the emergency services for dealing with these incidents so promptly. And Downing Street are saying that they don't want to, comment any further, given that this is a live investigation. We have had messages of support coming through, though, for the Prime Minister. The latest from the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch. She said this morning, "This is a shocking incident. My thoughts are with the Prime Minister and his family. No one should face these sorts of threats, let alone people in public service. It's an attack on our democracy and must never be tolerated." Well, this 21-year-old man is still in police custody, being questioned by counter-terrorism detectives. In the meantime, other detectives have been speaking to people in this neighbourhood and the neighbourhood in Islington, gathering CCTV and other forensic that will help with that ongoing investigation.
Fascinating. That's Mark White. Thanks so much. That's Mark White, our Home and Security. Let's talk to the security expert, Will Geddes, now. Will, good morning to you. We should always recall, of course, 2 MPs have been murdered in this country in the last decade, David Amess and Joe Cox.
Yes, morning, Andrew. Morning, Nana. Yes, it's something that which we're seeing increasingly become a problem. I mean, certainly back to the days of the Troubles with Northern Ireland, that was the last time that we really had a considered effort or if you like, targeting of MPs in the United Kingdom. But what we have seen is we've seen these disparate individuals, which I believe is going to be very much the case in this instance, who have been incentivized, they've been encouraged, they've been inflamed, probably by various communications online, whether that be through sort of sub-social groups, not the conventional Twitters and Instagrams that most of the viewers and listeners will be using, but these sort of smaller communities that will sort of fire up their bellies into wanting to carry out these types of attacks, which inevitably, since, Joe Cox and David Amess, which were the two most prominent recent MPs that were targeted and killed, it does raise concerns, inevitably, the fact that this isn't a surgery, these are at private residences.
Thank you very much. That is security expert Will Geddes. Now, the US President Donald Trump is in Saudi Arabia for the first major diplomatic trip and his second term.
We've just seen pictures of him arriving, actually. Live pictures, if you're listening on the radio. And there is a armed procession, armed guard for him. The President has praised his trade deal before he got on the plane, or perhaps he was on the plane when he praised the trade deal, which slammed the EU, saying they're nastier than China. But let's have a watch of what's happening here. He'll inspect the armed guard, I imagine.
This is sort of a welcome for Donald Trump as he arrives. The pictures that we were showing you are actually live pictures of him arriving, and there he is. He's saluting there.
As they play the Stars and Stripes, and it's a huge turnout for him. Significant that he's gone to Saudi Arabia first because it's a major trading partner, and he's going. And he was going to be in Israel at some point this week too.
It's interesting though that there were rumours that he's been given a plane. By the Qataris, which would replace Air Force One. Now, I'm struggling to believe that he would accept that.
Me
Seems
too.
a bit odd.
And apparently then at the end of the presidency, it would be attached to the Donald Trump Presidential Library, because all presidents, when they leave office, they get a presidential library. So he would be able to use it. But I just think it's extraordinary. How many bugs would be in the plane?
Well, exactly. And would it even be safe? Because obviously Qatar are harbouring the leaders of Hamas. So, we sell so many arms to Qatar. In fact, they're the #1 country that we sell this country.
I know.
To Qatar.
It's not like the United States can't afford to replace Air Force One, but during his first term, he got very cross because there was Air Force One needed some repairs or something, and they weren't done on time, and he was very anxious, got very frustrated by it because he uses the plane a lot. But it would be extraordinary if he did take that as a gift.
People are saying it's not true. It's just rumours. British journalists jumping on the back of something. Fake news. But it does seem to be resonating. It does feel like there's some clarity. We'll be speaking to Greg Stenson very shortly because I'd like to find out. In fact, let's speak to Greg Stenson now. Greg, I don't know whether you can see the pictures on screen, but it's Donald Trump as he arrives in Saudi, and he's being visited and saluted by the authorities there.
Yeah, I could see the screen. It's, remember, this is the second time. During his first term, he made Saudi the first visit, or first official visit. So, he did go to the Pope's funeral, Pope Francis's funeral a few weeks ago, but that was kind of a unplanned visit. So this is the first official trip for the president. And I do think it shows you that there is, that this relationship with the Gulf states is important to the president.
It's a big trading partner, also very important in terms of the balance of power in the Middle East.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you'll see more discussions about possibly the Saudis joining the Abraham Accords. That was, really one of his best accomplishments, foreign policy accomplishments in his first term. So I think you'll see a resumption of that conversation, and hopefully they can move along.
Just remind people, Greg Swenson, what the Abraham Accords are.
Sure. Yeah, that was the first recognition formally of the Arab countries, the first recognition of Israel and the resumption of normalized relations. So between the UAE and Israel and a handful of other Arab countries. And so that was a really great moment for peace in the Middle East in his first term. And it's worth mentioning that the Biden administration refused to discuss the Abraham Accords. If you worked in the White House, you could not utter the words Abraham Accords, nor could you use them in a letter or email or memo, because the administration was just couldn't handle the fact that President Trump was so successful in his diplomacy in the Middle East, and so they just squashed it for 2 years because they just didn't want to really have a President Trump outcome be so successful. Now, that all changed on October 7th. And of course, since then, the Biden administration embraced the Abraham Accords. But I think, it was a great testament to President Trump's commitment to peace in the Middle East.
Greg, do you know if there's any truth to the rumours that Donald Trump may well be accepting a plane from Qatar?
Yeah, I think like a lot of actions with President Trump, it never ends up being what was first discussed. It's classic President Trump formula. He does something unorthodox or provocative. The media freaks out, the left freaks out, his opponents freak out, and then a few days later or a few weeks later, everything works out. We've seen that with the trade deals. We've seen it with a lot of the accomplishments that President Trump has had in both terms. And so I think this one will either go away quietly or the outcome will be quite different than what we're seeing right now. I think accepting a gift like that might be a little bit provocative if it's done from a purely government to government level, then that's okay. But if it's personal,
yeah, but it'd be quite a gift. I mean, it's a Boeing. It's not just any old plane. It's a Boeing 747, which would retail at over £300 million. So that's quite a gift to give the President of the United States. Unprecedented, I would say.
Again, I think it couldn't be accepted as a personal gift, but if it's a government thing, I think of it as the Statue of Liberty from our friends in France in the 1800s. But more importantly, I think the president made a good comment yesterday. He said, if someone gives you a putt, take the putt, take the gift. Don't risk it. Just say thank you. And maybe there's some merit to that. But and it is a 747 from Boeing. It's not an Airbus. It's not a competitor. It's an American plane. But who knows? I don't think it will end up being as simple as the Qataris gifting a 747 to the president.
Now, of course, Donald Trump's getting increasingly more frustrated, isn't he, with his negotiations with Vladimir Putin? Yeah. He tried to do some sort of peace deal or a ceasefire deal, but then Putin attacked Ukraine quite heavily over the last few days. Has he said much more about this?
Yeah, he's expressed his frustration. It's a really good point, Nana, and he is frustrated because it's Putin that's been the real wild card here. But I do think that he was able to get, or someone was able to get the Russians and the Ukrainians at least to commit to a conversation. They might meet in Istanbul in the near term. So that's an important. Again, the President Trump is a peace president. He's an anti-war president. He got India and Pakistan to the table. In the last week. He got the Houthis to put down their missiles, at least for now. He's got some conversations going with Iran. He's, and hopefully he gets Russia and Ukraine to the negotiating table. This is important for the president. And yes, Nana, he's definitely frustrated with Putin.
He's talked en route, Greg, about trade and talked about the EU. We know he's no fan of the EU. He has said in one interview that the European Union was set up to almost spite America, and he said it's a much nastier organisation than China. That doesn't augur very well for doing for tariff negotiations with the EU, and we can, of course, breathe a sigh of relief in Britain that we're out of the EU thanks to Brexit.
That's right. And I think, look, the president, again, he's provocative, so he might make comments like that aren't necessarily true. But it's a way to get the conversation going. I know ultimately the U.S. will do a deal with the EU. But Andrew, great point. This is a testament to Brexit once again, that the U.K. was able to negotiate a deal. I thought Keir Starmer did a good job. I thought Mendelsohn did a really great job in the Oval Office last week. So, huge week for news here in the U.S. with the U.S.-UK deal on Thursday, followed by the announcement of the first American Pope, but from Chicago, where I'm sitting, by the way.
I wonder if he's thrown a spanner in the works here, because he has talked about the pharmaceuticals industry and chemicals, and he said that in America you can pay $500 for an asthma drug, which you pay $40 for in the United Kingdom. Now, Britain sells over £6 billion worth of drugs and pharmaceuticals to America. Is he going to whack us with tariffs on that, do you think?
I don't think so, Andrew. I don't think it'll be as simple as tariffs. You know, how he gets to the end game or to the outcome is somewhat unknown right now. But it is distorted, right? You know, the way it exists right now, it's completely unfair. These companies are basically burdening the U.S. consumer with their R&D, their research and development costs. I mean, I understand pharmaceutical companies have to fund their research and development. I get that. You know, it's not just the cost of producing the drug, and I understand that, you know, patents have to be protected for a certain amount of time to help those pharmaceutical companies pay for their R&D. But the problem is they're selling them at cost in Europe and other countries that we trade with, while funding the R&D off the back of the U.S. consumer. It's just unsustainable. And you're seeing countless examples of U.S. consumers paying considerably more for drugs and drugs and medicine. So I'm not sure that's sustainable. And so, you know, we don't like to see distortions in markets. I don't think that government typically should be putting price caps on anything. It doesn't work, first of all. But I think in this case, there's got to be a private sector solution to really freeing the market, essentially.
All right, Greg, stay right there. We're joined by political commentators Piers Pottinger and also GBNews' senior political commentator in the studio. Shall I start with you, Piers? What's your thoughts on this? Donald Trump, he's visiting Saudi, which is obviously it's a good thing, I suppose, in terms of relations. But what are your thoughts on it?
Well, he's hoping to get some investment into the US from the Arab states that are awash with money. And it's a fairly obvious thing to do. I mean, unfortunately, when it comes to the matter of human rights, he has to park those on one side. And when you're with Mohammed bin Salman, you want to be very careful you don't get cut into little pieces.
Yes.
As he famously did to a journalist. No, I mean, personally, I think, sadly, these states have all the money, and we need it, and we need the investment in the West. But personally, I really deplore their human rights record. All of them are very poor at this. And the way they treat women and the way they behave to many of their own citizens is really quite disgraceful and really goes back to kind of medieval times. I don't regard them as civilized countries.
I suppose you could say that about the past in this country as well, and other parts of the world. I don't know any of those countries with a clean bill of health where they've been nice to everybody. I think
I would agree. But when the leader of a country is actually personally responsible for murdering a journalist in the most horrific way.
In a Saudi
I
building,
mean, it is fairly extraordinary that the leader of the Western world brushes that aside and is there shaking hands with him. And
Nigel, that's always been the problem. I mean, remember when Blair got into power, he had what he was going to call an ethical foreign policy. Robin Cook was his first foreign secretary.
It disappeared very quickly.
It disappeared so quickly when they started flogging planes, war planes. I've forgotten to a country that was involved in a war because they need the money.
That's right. I mean, if you look at Saudi Arabia, 40% of our arms trade relies on Saudi Arabia buying stuff. It's then used to go and bomb children in Yemen. So, as you say, the ethical foreign policy completely went out the window. It was Robin Cook who tried to bring it in, who was then Foreign Secretary.
And it was Robin Cook who got General Pinochet arrested in this country.
He did indeed,
I mean, which it came to nothing, because, of course, it was a ludicrous thing for Cook to have done.
Quite symbolic there.
But, I mean, you know, Pinochet...
he was the Chinese... He was the Chilean...
He was the Chilean dictator. You know, I'd put him on a par with Mohammed bin Salman.
But we are selling... I mean, we sell a phenomenal amount of arms to Qatar, though, and weapons and things. So who are we to say, oh, well, you know, OK, so, yes, it was not good, a journalist ending up chopped up in bits in a suitcase and all that. You know, that's terrible.
It is. And, I mean, BAE's contract with Saudi is the biggest industrial contract in Europe. for any company. So, I mean, we do colossal business with these people. You do have to wonder in a country like Qatar, which is very, very small, why it needs so many arms. And I know the Israelis are very uncomfortable about it, for example. But, and also Qatar's human rights record is diabolical.
If you were advising the President of the United States, would you say, take the plane? This Boeing 747?
I'd sell it.
Well, it's jaw-dropping that
it is a
been
Boeing.
offered.
It is a Boeing.
Yeah,
and I mean,
it's an American plane.
Just Trump, apart from on the so-called trade deal we did with the US, one of the aspects of it was us buying 32 jets from Boeing, thus saving Boeing at the moment. As well, Trump has just done a deal with China, and China has taken off the ban on buying Boeings for Chinese airlines. So Trump has been on a mission to save one of the biggest companies in America, and he's doing a very good job at that, I have to say.
So would you say take it or not?
I'm sure, yes. I don't see any reason why not.
But aren't they going to put it full of bugs, the plane?
Well, I'm sure that
they bug him anyway.
The CIA will debug it very quickly.
And I suppose they're bugged anyway.
I mean, the whole thing is that obviously it's slightly different. Being head of state as Trump is, he can probably do what he likes. If Keir Starmer was offered this plane, the advice would be, no, don't take it. Well, if he did take it, he'd have to give it back to the British state anyway.
Well, he probably would take it, given freebie gate.
Well, I don't think Lord Ali can afford her.
He, of course, Lord Ali, who gave the Prime Minister, I mean, the freebie row.
I know that was
dwarfs in comparison to getting a Boeing 747.
Yeah, I mean, but the freebie row should never have happened. It was such a bad look.
Let's bring Greg Swenson back into this conversation. Greg, should he take this Boeing 747? Donald Trump?
I think if he does it as a representative of the government, of the country, yes. If it's a personal gift, of course not. So, and again, I don't think the outcome will be anything like we're seeing right now.
I don't see it. I wouldn't be able to get into a plane like that if it had been given to me, because they could do anything to it, absolutely anything. Not just the bugs. I'd be more concerned.
If somebody gave me a plane, I think I'd more than be happy to take it.
Depends who gives you the plane.
I think I wouldn't mind at all.
If it was one of your arch enemies or
somebody...
somebody...
I'd be worried if there were staff on board with knives.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it is extraordinary. I mean, he has said he'd be, quote, stupid not to take it, but you just never know with Trump.
No, well, I mean, it is a very bizarre situation, but I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, I'd like why don't the Saudis give us a royal yacht for the king? That would be rather nice.
Do you think the king could take it?
I think he could, and he probably would.
No, that would be a step too far. But I mean, I appreciate he might like a royal yacht, but the idea of taking something like that from the Saudis, no. I mean, it feels too much like a bribe, doesn't it?
Yeah. How are some of your Labour mates feeling, Nigel? Seeing that here we've got Trump being, as Piers Positive points out, with these terrible despots, but knowing that Keir Starmer and David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, have to do business with them as well?
I think there's a general kind of feeling that we have to do business with them and also with President Trump. And, OK, we haven't quite seen all the details of the trade deal we've done with America, but what it does show is that probably Starmer's way of dealing with Trump, basically flattering him, that kind of thing, has actually paid off. We've got a deal that we wouldn't have had otherwise. Again,
we're still worse off than before Trump got in.
£10 billion worse off.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and also all the details haven't been worked out.
That's the point.
We've got
we have to see the details.
Tariffs coming, and there's much worse to come, I believe. I think Starmer's just fallen for Trump and rolled over, quite frankly.
Well, he hasn't got any power. He can't do anything.
And then we've got coming up next week the UK-EU summit, where Starmer is going to kowtow to Europe and cause even more problems, which will
hang on.
go against
take what we know about
yesterday.
Piers, what we got from the trade deal, we know about tariffs being lifted on steel and aluminium. That must be a plus. We know that the 25% tariffs on cars have gone down to 10%.
Yeah, there's still 10% they weren't before.
I appreciate that, but we've got to deal with the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be. So that's what they've done.
Nigel, can I ask, is this a Brexit benefit then, this deal with...
Oh, yeah, I mean, I've always said that you can't say anything else. We could not have done that deal if we were in the EU.
Nor with India.
And the same applies to India. So, yes, that as a result of Brexit, we are able to do these deals we couldn't before. It doesn't mean we are better off now than we were before Brexit.
Well, Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, couldn't accept that it was a Brexit benefit.
Well, that's up to him.
He was not prepared to say anything of the sort.
Greg Swinton, we should remind listeners, viewers, that a previous President of the United States, Barack Obama, stuck his nose in our referendum in a way he frankly shouldn't have, and said we would be at the back of the queue for a trade deal. Well, in fact, we were at the front. Have we still got Greg Swinton? I think we've lost him.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I know that was Obama did intervene.
Yes.
I mean, it was a mistake in my view.
Of course it was. Yes. I mean, we've got this so-called trade deal, and I say so-called because it hasn't been actually implemented properly yet in all the ways, and we don't know the full details. At the same time, what is becoming increasingly apparent is that Starmer is a man with no values, no principles, and no idea what he's doing. Because yesterday he was talking about stopping migration, when a few years ago he welcomed migration with open arms. Don't forget, all this insane migration was started by Tony Blair in 1997. It's all down to them, not the Conservatives in the last 14 years. They didn't help.
Boris Johnson...
No. Boris Johnson who opened the floodgates.
Boris Johnson increased immigration in certain sectors, and that's one of the problems about what Keir Starmer did yesterday. The care sector, for instance, that in the 4 years since Boris Johnson was around, there are 20,000 more care workers in this country as a result of foreign recruitment.
But he was also talking...
but now we're suddenly stopping that recruitment, and there's still 131,000 vacancies. So there are questions to be asked about whether or not some immigration is useful, especially in industries that got a shortage, and you can't fill it.
Well, what about the disastrous Indian deal he did, where Indian workers here are going to be able to work and the companies will not be subject to the increase in business costs?
But we've done that deal with 50 other countries.
With India. So he's encouraged... A week ago, he's encouraging us to employ Indians. Yesterday, he said we want to employ more British people. The man doesn't know what he's doing.
Indian companies can employ Indian nationals over here and be exempt from national insurance, employee and employer.
Why?
So they're not double taxed, because they're still paying their social security payments back in India.
The effect of this on the British textile industry is going to be catastrophic.
But hang on, but when you do a trade deal, that is the normal way of doing it. So foreign employees who come over here don't then have to pay double taxes.
The Treasury is estimating it will cost £200 million in lost revenue in national insurance. 200 million. How's that a good trade deal if you lose it?
It's a good trade deal, but we get $5 billion a year out of it.
But you know
not eventually.
You know,
even
in 15 years.
Eventually.
I don't believe these figures. I don't believe these figures.
Well, no, of course not. And the reason yesterday Starmer didn't want to put a number on how he was going to reduce much migration by is because if he gave a number, the OBR would then come in and Rachel Reeves will have to put up taxes in the autumn. And that, folks, is what's coming. We all know it.
And Rachel
Reeves
just don't want to admit it. She wants a cheap flow of migrant labour in this country because she thinks wrongly it will help create growth.
She does, yes.
We've been flooded with cheap migrant labour for years and we've got no growth.
But cutting it means cutting the migration has a ripple effect and will mean that the OBR will say to Reeves, you've got to put up taxes or cut spending.
But that goes against what Andrew has just said. Obviously, what it meant was that migrants to this country did, in fact, help growth. That certainly has been the conventional view of both the Treasury and the OBR in the past.
I think Number 10's changing its view on that.
Well, they are, yes. I mean, Keir Starmer said yesterday he does not believe...
We are getting a split emerging already between the Number 10 and Number 11. Very dangerous for a government.
Well, we know what happened to Gordon Brown and Tony Blair.
Well, the only reason Starmer made the speech yesterday was because of the reform success in the local elections. It was a political speech just to save his own neck, hoping he can get re-elected, which there's no chance of.
You're right. You're right. Reform is behind it. You're wrong that it was something he suddenly decided to do. That was a 97-page white paper which has been worked out for months. So that is not new.
I think they brought it forward.
Well, they may well have done.
They rushed it.
They may well have done. I mean, certainly reform had a lot to do with it, especially some of the language that Keir Starmer used yesterday.
I mean, it's just a political trick. It shows
well,
again
it's not,
he's
the
got
white paper's
no real
Piers.
principles
It's not
or values. And the British people know this. They know he's just paper thin and a front for his ludicrous, mad, lawyer-like socialist ideology, and he doesn't stand for anything.
But if this brings down migration,
it's going to win him a vote.
If it brings down migration by a significant amount, while also protecting the British economy, it will have been a success.
Well, it won't be a success.
I'm giving an if there because I don't know whether it'll be successful or not, but that's the intention. The problem area is the British economy. The way migration should work is we bring in migrants that we need for the economy. That's it. And the danger of this is we're going to lose construction workers we need to build the 1.5 million homes that Labour are promising. We could have problems in the hospitality industry. I don't know whether it'll work, but it
won't work. It has no chance of working. How are they
you would say that about any Labour policy, Piers.
Because they don't work, and it's proven time and time again. Socialism never works. Now, what's happening here is you will see very quickly that, first of all, it's impossible to enforce most of the things they're talking about. It's also going to encourage people to come here, because if you can stay here for 10 years before you then become a citizen, possibly. By the way, if you're not going to become a citizen, what happens after 10 years? You're going to stay here because no one's going to kick you out after 10 years.
I mean,
the whole thing is absolutely
if you extend indefinite leave to remain from 5 to 10 years, there's another 5 years on top of the original 5 where you're not quite sure about your future. If you've decided you want to settle in this country...
How does this help anyone? And how are they going to enforce it? It's ludicrous. And also the cost of this. It's absurd. And yet again, yesterday, they introduced another new quango costing billions of taxpayers' money. This, I think, is the 29th new quango introduced by this hopeless government.
The idea of the 5 to 10 years that you seem to be against, I mean, this was actually... The Tories have had this knocking about as a policy for ages. So, I mean, I can't quite see that there was a general agreement that it should be extended to 10 years.
So, they haven't made clear whether it refers to people already here.
That's right. No, we need to know that.
I'm just going to jump in, Jen, because we've just noticed that Elon Musk was introduced to Mohammed bin Salman. So these reports that Elon Musk is falling out of favour with the President of the United States, clearly with so, Piers. He's with him in the entourage. What's happening at the moment is the American entourage, which is enormous, by the way, is being introduced to Mohammed bin Salman, and there he was talking to Elon Musk. So why would the head of Tesla be on this trip?
Well, he's still technically a government advisor.
Yeah.
And, of course, as one of the biggest businessmen in America, he might want to sell a few Teslas into Saudi Arabia.
Well, he needs to flog a few because his company's been tanking since he became part of the administration.
And if he pulls off a deal for Tesla, the US wins and Musk wins.
Yeah.
I would have thought it's a fairly obvious thing. I mean, when we take major delegations abroad, we tend to take one or two serious businesses to try and do some sort of deal to benefit the country, to justify the cost of all these trips.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen with Starmer, mind you.
Yeah, but I mean, it shows that he's still a key player here.
Yeah, it does, in fact. But I mean, even if he wasn't part of the administration, I mean, I think that he was talking about giving up that role round about now. He hasn't given it up yet, but it's around about now it'll happen. But even if he wasn't part of the administration, Piers is right there that as a major American businessman, you'd expect him to be on a visit like this, which is designed to drum up trade with America.
Yeah. If Colonel Sanders was alive, he'd be out there flogging chicken.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, because they all love it out there. They all eat tons of chicken, of course.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And of course, we've heard today that Macron gets here before Trump.
Yeah. Macron, with or without his cocaine.
That is extraordinary.
Which we've seen these absurd...
The bizarre story is that the Kremlin's been... Just to put it in context...
Just explain it.
Put it in context. The Kremlin have been putting it about that Emmanuel Macron was taking cocaine with Keir Starmer and Merz of Germany, and it's based on a picture of the three of them meeting, and there is a white tissue in between. But the Kremlin's leapt on this, and their social media acolytes have been putting the whole thing out, which has forced then the French president to deny absolutely he was doing...
I have to say, Macron looked rather furtive, didn't he, when he removed the tissue?
He did look,
and hid it.
I mean, if I was stuck in a train with Keir Starmer, I think I'd probably end up taking...
Stop. You know you wouldn't do anything illegal, Piers. We know you wouldn't do that. Of course you would. Of course you would. But it is because of social media now. I mean, that's gone viral, that
It has gone viral. I mean, it's silly. It is silly. But when it comes down to Macron coming here, I think that's quite right. It's quite clear that Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron have actually developed a real personal relationship.
But he's a busted flush. His term ends in 2027. He can't have another one.
No, that's perfect.
And he doesn't even have control of his own parliament anymore.
But 2027 is a while away.
We are paying the French £500 million a year to ferry people across illegally into our country.
To run their Uber service.
I think 400 came yesterday.
Yeah, they did, which was pretty good timing, wasn't it, on the day the Prime Minister was telling us he was going to control our borders.
400, and they're all men, they're all around 30.
That's right, and more across today.
I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And, of course, it's going to get worse after the EU summit next week with... I mean, we're going to give in, our fishing rights are going to go. We're going to have more people coming because we're going to have mobility for up to 30-year-olds.
I'm surprised they mentioned giving up Gibraltar.
I know.
I mean, a 29-year-old is not a youth.
And how many times had they denied that mobility scheme was coming back?
But they're going to do it.
And now it's coming back.
Yeah. And how does that tally with what he said yesterday? We're just going to get more and more people here.
Because they'll say they're here temporarily, they won't include them in the immigration figures.
That's right.
They'll cook the books.
Well, it's not cooking the books.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
It is.
They're coming over here to study or work, and in return, our young people can go and study and work in Europe.
And how do we know
what is wrong with
How do we know they're going to go back?
Well, I would think that going back to France or Germany to their homes is more likely than wanting to stay here.
Well, I'm not
in the same way that our young people won't stay over there either. They'll go there and do their job, study if they want to, and then return. It seems to me, I never understood why the government was against it. It just seems to be a useful thing for young people, an easy thing to do, nothing to do with immigration. It was the sort of thing that I was surprised that they were opposing initially.
But we're talking about adults, fully grown adults, not youth.
Yeah, quite.
Up to 30. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
If they were genuine young students, that you could make a case for it. But this isn't that. It's anyone under 30. Come off it.
Well, yeah, it's not exactly anyone. It is if you've got a.
Yes, it is.
If you're studying for, say, a PhD over here, you'd have to have the place in the first place before you can do it. And the same thing applies to a job. If you were doing a job over here, but the idea of giving people experience of working in other countries, surely that must be of some benefit.
But they already exist. You can work in other countries anyway. It's nothing new in this. It's actually just bringing more and more people into this country, when yesterday the Prime Minister was trying to claim he was stopping this. I mean, it shows again, Starmer has no idea what he's actually doing.
It does lack a bit of joined-up thinking here, don't you think?
Well, I don't see why there's a problem with this.
How many people do we think are going to come between 18 to 30?
We don't know. I don't know the answer.
The whole of Europe? Is it every single country in the EU?
I mean, if we do the deal with the EU, every single country would have the right to actually come here.
So 27 countries?
Yeah, can send, but there would be a limited number of people. I don't know what the limit would be. There would be a limited number of people.
Well, it hasn't said that.
No, but
there's no limit on it.
Well, there would have to be a limit on the basis of what study places were available and what jobs were available.
Well, they haven't mentioned any limit.
No, I know, because it depends on what's available when they actually do the deal.
It's supposed to be one in, one out, actually, as I understood it.
Well, we'll see. But whatever is certain, I mean, one thing is certain: this is not good for Britain. This is Starmer
why is it not good for Britain
go back into the EU by the back door without a vote in Parliament, against the will of the British people? It is absolutely outrageous.
It's free movement.
What he's doing.
It's a form of free movement.
No,
free movement was decisively rejected in the referendum.
That was the reason that I think the government were against it, because people like you would say, "Oh, it's free movement. Come back again." It's not free movement. Well, it is time limited.
It is.
They will come here, do the job, or study for a degree, and then they will go home. That is not free movement.
Piers is right. What time limit? They haven't told us.
Well, if you were studying for a degree, you'd expect it to be a PhD, about a year.
Okay.
Another degree, but maybe 3 years.
And what about
we already do this with Ecuador, with Japan, with South Korea, and all the Commonwealth countries. So we already have youth mobility schemes up and running now.
Why did they say they weren't going to do it if they are going to do it? They repeatedly said they weren't going to do it.
I know they did initially, yeah, and I thought they were wrong.
They were lying.
Well, I didn't think they were lying. I think they were. I think they were wrong.
Not only are they doing this, they're also going to tax the universities on overseas students' fees.
Yep.
6%. So we're looking at hundreds of millions of pounds taken from our universities. That's helpful, isn't it?
Well, no, I don't think it is helpful. I'm really surprised about that.
Outrageous. This was another example of how hopeless our education minister
this was something. Excuse me. That Boris Johnson did. He wanted to encourage foreign students here. The target was 600,000 a year by 2030, and the idea was to support universities and give them the money they needed, because these people pay up to £30,000 in tuition fees. Then Rishi Sunak comes in and decides, well, they can't bring any relatives with them, so now they don't come. Universities are having a problem. What comes next? Do we actually then increase student tuition fees?
Well, we're going to bring all these students over from all over Europe, and then they're going to pay the fees, and the government's going to tax them, so the universities suffer again. It's absolutely phenomenally stupid. And it makes no sense whatsoever. And the pieces, as Andrew quite rightly said, nothing adds up with this government, because they can't add up. I think they're just the most incompetent bunch of lunatics I've ever seen.
Wasn't in the manifesto either, was it?
What?
This tax on the universities?
No, it wasn't. But all the manifesto had was that a plan would be drawn up to lower net migration. So the manifesto went no further about the details of that, which is why it's taken some time.
Well, the manifesto was a work of total fiction. I mean, absolutely nothing they said in that have they done properly.
Well, they've certainly kept the manifesto promises, but I do accept
they've added them.
Well, they have. They haven't actually raised VAT, income tax, or employee national insurance. I actually think that they shouldn't have made that promise in the first place, because Rachel Reeves may well need to do one or two of those things later on in the government.
Because of the mess she's already created.
But things like the winter fuel allowance, which again I'm against, but the winter fuel allowance wasn't in the manifesto. So there's no broken promise there. But they didn't say they were going to do it, I accept.
Oh, it's OK, because they didn't break a promise by...
Well, that's what manifestos are. I mean, most political parties end up, within their term of office, breaking a manifesto promise.
This is a socialist party.
As we stand, they haven't been broken.
Allowances for pensioners. For goodness sake, it's a disgrace.
We have got Nigel Nelson in the studio with us and Piers Pottinger having their usual dust-up. Donald Trump is still meeting various people with Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia. It's the start of his visit. I did say that he was going to Israel. Of course, he's not going to Israel as part of this trip to the Middle East. He's going on to Qatar, I think.
Qatar and the UAE.
Yeah.
And most importantly, possibly Turkey on Thursday, which is for the peace summit with Zelensky and Putin. We don't know whether he'll go for that, but that would be, if he did turn up, that would be the most important part of this tour.
Hugely, particularly if Putin attends.
I don't think he will, Dad. I don't think he will. Well, I think he wants war. I don't see he wants peace at all.
No, you're right.
Well, then he'll get... the suggestion is that there'll be even bigger sanctions on Russia.
I don't know whether they're
But the Europeans haven't agreed on them. They can't agree.
I know, and the Europeans
it has to get the approval of all 27 countries, which they're not going to get.
No, absolutely. Piers and Nigel will be back with us shortly. We've got to say, we've got the Donald Trump in Saudi Arabia at the start of his official visit. Fascinating. God, he's got to shake a lot of hands.
We have still to come, though. In Sir Keir Starmer's speech setting out his plan to cut migration, he said Britain risks becoming an island of strangers. Is he stoking division or is it common sense? Stay with us. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. We are the People's Channel.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another day where most places will be fine and sunny. But like yesterday, we are expecting a few heavy showers and even the odd thunderstorm to break out this afternoon. It is quite cloudy around some of the coasts across northern and eastern Scotland. That could stick around for a good chunk of the day. For most places, it's a fine blue sky kind of morning. By late morning into the early afternoon, this zone here could well be seeing some heavy and perhaps even thundery showers as far east as Sussex. The heaviest ones most likely South Wales, around Bristol, Gloucestershire and Somerset. But they'll be very hit and miss, many places avoiding them. Feeling warmer in the sunshine with temperatures getting into the low 20s, perhaps into the mid-20s in one or two locations. As I said, these showers will be hit and miss, but where they do occur, they could drop a lot of rain in a short space of time. A lot of spray and surface water in parts of the M4 and the M5 potentially for this evening's rush hour. The vast majority dry, fine, sunny and pretty warm. Always cooler on some of these coasts and particularly fresh if this mist and low cloud does stick around, as it could do on some of the coasts across northeastern Scotland. Temperatures may struggle to get much above 11 or 12 Celsius. And it's likely to move back inland through this evening as well. The showers in the southwest, well, they should fade away. Still a possibility of one or two over the Channel Islands. They could just return north back into parts of Devon and Cornwall through the early hours. But most of us having a dry night, temperatures dipping down into single digits for the vast majority. And that mist and low cloud still around on Wednesday, perhaps a little further inland over parts of northern England tomorrow morning, gradually burning back to the coast. The chance of one or two showers for Devon and Cornwall, the Isles of Scilly early doors, but again, they should scoot away. And for most places, it's another cracking day tomorrow. Plenty of sunshine, fine conditions. Again, that breeze picking up, so that'll keep things fresh on some North Sea coast, but warm enough where we see some sunshine over many central and western parts.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be the next big winner on the road in this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome, courtesy of Marquis Leisure. Imagine the fun you could have in this luxurious home from home worth over £67,000. We'll also give you £5,000 in tax-free cash to make your next getaway a great one. And it could be all yours. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock on Tuesday, the 13th of May, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Nana Akua.
Good morning to you. House fire arrest. A 21-year-old man is arrested on suspicion of arson after a fire broke out at the Prime Minister's home.
Well, as counter-terrorism police lead this investigation, the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has described these firebomb attacks as an attack on democracy.
NHS spy scales. Fat children, we are still allowed to call them that, will be under surveillance as the NHS is going to remotely take note of how much they weigh.
Donald Trump is in the Middle East. He meets Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman as he begins his first major diplomatic trip of his second term in office.
Bonjour, Monsieur Macron. King Charles will host the French president in a state visit to the UK in July, some months before Donald Trump arrives for his visit.
And of course, another substation fire. Chaos as London is ground to a halt yesterday as the transport network was crippled by a fire. We'll look at why these incidents are happening more often.
And the Peter Sullivan murder appeal. The man who's been in jail for murder for 38 years will find out if his conviction will be quashed at the Court of Appeal today as new evidence comes to light.
We risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together.
Disorder at the border. 600 Channel migrants arrived to Britain in 24 hours. All of this whilst the Prime Minister announces sweeping reforms to cut immigration levels.
And France's biggest movie star, Gerard Depardieu, has been found guilty of sexual assault in a case which will overshadow the Cannes Film Festival, which starts today.
And pets outrank partners. Cats and dogs are the ultimate emotional support, beating spouses, kids and friends. Do you agree? Meow.
Because we've heard your girly voice to try and persuade your daughter to open her bedroom door to you. That wasn't very impressive. Your meow was worse.
Well, it just kept bringing flashbacks to that awful scene with, what's his name, George, what's his name, the MP? When he
George Galloway, in the Big Brother house.
Oh, that was bad.
That was not a good look.
You can't unsee that once you've seen it.
No. And wasn't he wearing tight red lycra?
Oh,
Too
God,
much.
I didn't notice that. Yeah, that was bad. But anyway, do your pets outrank people? gbnews.com/your say. And is this another nanny state scenario? Getting, weighing obese children like this? What do you think? gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you and good morning. The top stories this hour. Police have arrested a man over suspected arson attacks on properties linked to the Prime Minister. The 21-year-old was arrested in the early hours of this morning on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life. The arrest follows a fire at the Prime Minister's private home in North London in the early hours of yesterday. On Sunday, emergency services were called to a small fire at the front door of a house converted into flats in Islington, a property also linked to the Prime Minister. One person was assisted to safety via an internal staircase by firefighters. Police are also looking at a car fire as part of the investigation. Counter-terrorism police are leading the probe and are treating the fires as suspicious and investigating whether they are linked. The Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has condemned the attacks. US President Donald Trump is in Saudi Arabia for the first major diplomatic trip of his second term and has been greeted by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Donald Trump is expected to look for new economic agreements in the Middle East. He'll visit Riyadh, Doha and Abu Dhabi, which will last through the week. The US leader wants to focus on big deals and investments, but the region is not what it was 8 years ago when Mr. Trump last visited, with a lot of focus now on the war in Gaza. The trip comes after his officials in China agreed to slash tariffs in a de-escalation of their trade war. Buckingham Palace has announced that the King is to host the French President on a state visit to the UK. Emmanuel Macron will visit from the 8th of July until the 10th. The palace has added the President and Mrs Macron will stay at Windsor Castle. The King and Queen paid a state visit to France in September of 2023. The last state visit to the UK from France was in March 2008. French actor Gerard Depardieu has been found guilty of sexually assaulting 2 women and handed an 18-month suspended sentence. The 76-year-old, who's appeared in more than 200 movies, was convicted by a court in Paris of groping the women during the filming of the 2021 film Les Volets Verts. His lawyer said he will appeal the verdict. Both of his victims had been working on the film in behind-the-scenes roles. They claimed they were scared to speak out at the time and intimidated by him. Depardieu had denied the allegations and had received support from many actors, directors, and even at one point the French President Emmanuel Macron, who'd previously described the actor as the pride of France. The Prime Minister faces criticism after unveiling his government's plan to cut net migration yesterday. The Labour government announced sweeping reforms of the immigration system, promising to take back control of the UK's borders. The plans, which are expected to reduce the number of people coming to the UK by up to 100,000 per year, include study visas and requiring a higher level of English across all immigration routes. But the proposals sparked concern from employers, particularly in the care sector, following the announcement that care worker visas would be scrapped. Meanwhile, GB News can reveal around 600 small boat migrants arrived in the UK yesterday, causing that fresh pressure on the Prime Minister. In other news, a man jailed for murder nearly 40 years ago could have his conviction quashed by the Court of Appeal today, ending what's thought to be the longest-running miscarriage of justice in British history. Peter Sullivan was convicted of murdering Diane Sindel in Birkenhead in August of 1986. The 21-year-old florist had been beaten and raped and left in an alleyway. Mr Sullivan has always maintained his innocence, and new tests ordered by the Criminal Cases Review Commission have revealed his DNA was not present on samples preserved at the time. Merseyside police have confirmed detectives are now carrying out an extensive investigation in a bid to identify who the new DNA profile belongs to, as to date there is no match on the National DNA Database. Elsewhere, wage growth has eased back while Britain's unemployment rate has hit a near 4-year high as the UK jobs market falters amid worries over the impact of soaring employee costs for companies. The ONS says the latest figures show further signs of a cooling labour market, with average regular earnings growth falling to 5.6% in the 3 months to March. This is down from 5.9% in the previous 3 months and the lowest level since the 3 months to November 2024. But wages still outstripped inflation, rising by 2.6%, higher after taking consumer prices index inflation into account, the ONS saying the rate of employment rose to 4.5% in the quarter to March. And Andy Murray will no longer be working as Novak Djokovic's coach. The decision, said to be by mutual consent, means Murray will not be by Djokovic's side when he chases an 8th Wimbledon title in July. And, of course, just days before the French Open begins. Djokovic, a 24-time Grand Slam champion, joined forces with Murray in November. Under Murray, the Serb reached semi-finals of the Australian Open, ultimately retiring injured after losing the first set. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me at 11:30.
Hello and welcome to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and me, Nana Rakwir, in for Bev Turner.
Getting lots of texts and emails.
Lots and lots of messages, yes. Well, people saying lots of stuff about it, in particular the conversation between Piers and Nigel. Jem says, is Trump being shown Starmer and Macron taking drugs? He put a picture in his pocket, laugh out loud. I think that was a reference to that ridiculous... I think it may have even been AI-driven. Annette says, so where are all these European students going to live? This is obviously in response to the fact that there's a policy which we're looking to potentially have more young people coming in under 30s. Then Arian says, could you ever trust... oh, poor Nigel, I'm not going to read that out. Poor Nigel, he's getting a bit... Oh, Mark says, great ding-dong this. Piers is tying Nigel in knots. Do you think?
Well, I'm not going to take sides.
Anne-Marie says, why are we having youth movement for all of these countries? And is this also up to 30? Or are there age restrictions? I think it's up to 30, actually. And must they prove that they are studying? Because 30 is not a youth and is outside the usual studying age. Very few can afford to go straight to master's degree from a bachelor's. It's a lie. There is not talks that Spain are going to want to settle for Gibraltar. I will never stop until Starmer is pushed back, and I won't say the rest of that. But
now, police have arrested a man on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life after fires at homes linked to the Prime Minister.
The 21-year-old was arrested in the early hours this morning and he remains in custody. GB News' Home and Security editor Mark White joins us now. Mark, what more can you tell us?
Yeah, this story really has moved at pace. It was yesterday afternoon, in fact, when we first got news of what looked like a suspicious fire here at the Prime Minister's home in Kentish Town. Of course, he doesn't live here at the moment while he's resident in Downing Street, but it is the family home, we understand, is rented out to tenants. That was in the early hours of yesterday morning, and that's all we really knew, other than indications that it was pointing to something suspicious, as it had happened early in the morning and had been a fire on the outside of the premises in the entranceway. But then, of course, we got the confirmation that Counter-Terror Command had taken over the investigation, and not long after that, the very worrying indications that it had been linked to two other suspected arson attacks. One just further down the street here, a vehicle that was attacked last Thursday and set ablaze, damage still visible on the roadway further down this street. And then another apparent firebomb attack on another building, a house, again, we're told, linked to the Prime Minister, this time in Islington, that took place the day before, Sunday, the early hours of Sunday morning, a day before this attack here in Kentish Town. All are being linked, all are being investigated as deliberate arson attacks. And now a 21-year-old man is in custody. As to motivation, we've heard nothing to indicate any particular motivation at this stage. It will form part of the police investigation going forward. As we say, it's now being led by Counter-Terrorism Command because these are homes linked to the Prime Minister and because of the potential for this to have been politically motivated.
All right, that's Mark White, who is our Home and Security Editor up there in North London. Thanks for joining us.
Right now, though, thousands of commuters were disrupted after an electrical substation fire, which brought London Underground to a standstill.
So apparently high-voltage electrical cables in North London caught fire, causing a power blip, and although it lasted seconds, it caused hours of chaos.
But why are these events happening? Well, joining us now in the studio, the director of Net Zero Watch, Andrew Momford. Andrew, what is going on? Some people are trying to equate it to what happened in Spain. Has it got nothing to do with that at all?
It has essentially got nothing to do with Spain at all. Grids get faults all the time. The question is then is the fault contained in a relatively small area, or does it spread across the whole country and take your whole grid out? That's what happened in Spain. What we're seeing in the UK is that we are getting more faults, but they are still being contained in a relatively small area. So the precursor of this that I think is quite interesting is the Heathrow fire a few weeks ago, where it caused absolute chaos, but was contained within a relatively small area. This time we've had another fault in a larger area. So it seems to me that we have a problem that our grid is quite fault prone. I think the reason for that is that essentially all the money that needs to be invested in grid infrastructure is going to build new infrastructure for net zero. So we're building new cables from Scotland down to England to bring in the power from the wind farms, but we're not replacing all the old infrastructure. So
that could be dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are going to see a big problem in the next few decades, in that we have allowed all the transformers and all the wiring across what we have already to get very old. And essentially, that is going to put a new pressure on spending. And I think Mr. Miliband is going to have a problem here, because he wants to spend big money on extending the grid. But in fact, we need to look rather urgently at the existing grid.
And we've had these fires, so flights were horribly disrupted, weren't they, at Heathrow? Yesterday, the tubes were a nightmare. I was caught up in the middle of it. But what could happen, Andrew? We could have potentially injury. If a fire is big and out of control, we could have injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, when power goes out, it can be life-threatening in itself. Yeah. I mean, when in Spain, when the whole grid went out, people died because they had home medical kit, which they then couldn't supply anymore. Now, that could happen here. At the moment, our grid hasn't suffered, a complete blackout like they did in Spain. But if these faults go on happening and we go on adding renewables to our grid, which will destabilise the grid, then perhaps we might have a blackout too, and then people will die as well. So, the whole direction of travel is really quite disturbing. And, I think, people will die eventually.
But the actual issue was only for a very short space of time. So why did it cause such a major problem?
So when you get a fault on the grid, the question is, how easy is it to contain it? Now, if you have a lot of renewables on the grid, then it's rather difficult to contain it. Essentially, you can lose your whole national grid in the space of a couple of seconds. Now, in the UK, we seem not to have had that problem so far. In about 2019, there was a blackout in much of the east of England when a wire was hit by lightning, and it took out a power station and it took out a major wind farm, and we lost a lot then. That could happen again. It could be bigger again. We just don't know is the answer. So it's a big problem.
All right, Andrew Montford, thank you very much. He's the director of Net Zero Watch.
Well, I think it's very worrying, don't you?
Very.
Ed Miliband. Let's not start on Ed Miliband, as it's now time for our daily reflection.
The GB News Daily Reflection.
Hello, my name is Nim Sabunge, and I'm the pastor of Freedom's Ark, a member of the Evangelical Alliance here in the Tottenham Town Hall. Welcome to today's devotional. In Romans chapter 8, verse 11, it says, "But if the spirit of him that raised up Jesus from the dead dwell in you, he that raised up Christ from the dead shall also quicken your mortal bodies by his spirit that dwells in you." What a promise. The same spirit, that same resurrection power that raised Jesus Christ from the dead now lives in us. This isn't just poetic language. It's practical. It's an everyday truth. It means that we are not powerless. It means that we are not alone. It means that we are not the same before Jesus Christ found us. An author once put it this way. He said, "The same power that conquered the grave lives in me." That means that I can do things which I could never do before. So what does this look like in real life? When we feel tired, we can ask for strength. When we're discouraged, we can speak life over our situation. When we feel stuck, the Spirit can move things forward. I pray that the Holy Spirit lives through me today and watches whatever changes in my life. Lord, I thank you. I thank God because he's filled me with the resurrection power and given us the ability to live in a new way of life. Jesus was raised from the grave, and in that same power that raised him from the grave now lives in us to change us forever. What a miracle.
Oh, that's beautiful, isn't it?
Really
I love
lovely.
that.
We love those reflections. Now, still to come, we have the latest from Donald Trump's visit to the Middle East. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
NHS trusts are being told to prioritise ethnic minority applicants for interview shortlists, and they justify hiring white British candidates. Now, the official guidance says at least one BAME candidate must be shortlisted, even if white candidates are better qualified. And one NHS trust admitted using positive discrimination to decide who even gets an interview. Now, managers are also told to use race as a tiebreaker, and guess who wins in that case? And to explain themselves if the hire isn't from a minority background. Now, some won't even move forward unless it's a non-white candidate is in the mix altogether. Now, all this while NHS backlogs are hitting record highs. What a carry-on. Dr. Mukherjee, let's start with you. When you look at the naked truth here, there must be BAME candidates on shortlists. You have to justify hiring white British candidates, and a tiebreaker, a toss of the coin. If there's an ethnic minority and a white person, the job will be given to the ethnic minority. Do you think that's racist?
That is racist. And it goes against the fundamentals of the NHS, which is about patient care and quality of care. And as a patient myself, I mean, I know I'm a doctor myself, but by all means, I pay taxes, and you all do as well. We want to get the best quality people serving us. We don't want to be paying money towards some sort of diversity hire just to tick a box. That doesn't serve the purpose. I don't think I would want to be, and I'm a person of colour myself, I don't think I would want to be a diversity hire. I think it's a bit of an insult, really, to think that of all the things I had to offer, the only thing that I have no control over, my skin colour, is what got me the job.
GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
What's the time? It is 11:22, Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK with Andrew Pearce and Nana Raquia. Thank you for tuning in yesterday and listening. We had fantastic viewing figures, so we're always very grateful, because we're nobody if we don't have people watching our programme.
Well, stay with us, because it's time for our current giveaway. Yes,
yeah.
it is the biggest one to date.
It is?
Yes, it is. It's the biggest. Your chance to win a motorhome worth over £67,000 and £5,000 in tax-free cash. One lucky viewer will also win all of that, and all of it could be yours. Here's how.
Great Britain is ready for you to explore this summer, and there's still plenty of time to grab this fabulous family motorhome. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, the Elnag Baron 560 comfortably sleeps 4, has integrated bathroom and kitchen spaces, and plenty of storage for all of the things you need to bring along on your next adventure. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that anywhere you visit in your brand new motorhome is done in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed. Joining us now, political commentators Piers Pottinger and GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson.
I tried to introduce earlier. Sorry about that. That's because we want so much of you. Now, you guys have found this is a really important story. It's in the business pages of The Telegraph. I'm surprised they didn't move it to the front of the book, actually, but that's their choice. Lloyds Bank has said to the Chancellor, get lost, because she wants pension funds to invest more in the UK. Explain the story.
Well, she's asked all the major pension funds it's a voluntary code at the moment, to invest 10% of their funds into private assets, such as infrastructure and things like that in the UK. Now, 17 of these 20 have said they will do it, which is surprising. But Lloyds, whose pension arm is Scottish Widows, so if any GB News viewer or listener is a Scottish widow, has their pension with Scottish Widows, they might be interested in this. But they've said they're not going to do it. And I think they're right. Because I don't really think it's anything to do with the government as to how we invest our pensions. But they have said, the Treasury have been very firm and said they're going to monitor this, and she's going to introduce legislation to force them to do this.
How can you do
that? And so, again, this is an insane idea, because it's not up to the Chancellor of the Exchequer to tell people, or in fact control, investments for individuals. That is just wrong, plain wrong. It's also, of course, I suspect the real reason she's so keen to do this is that trying to create a sovereign wealth fund has proved that is noticeably quiet on that front. And of course, Ed Miliband needs this desperately. And the question is that many of these private assets they're talking about, their returns to investors are not particularly good. And so why should a pension fund invest in stuff that produces a poor return just because the government says so? It's insane.
And Lloyds is a big name, so they said this will be quite a blow for them.
Oh, it's a big blow, and they're clearly very rattled by this, because they're going to force them to do it by law. And I think because Lloyds have dared to put their head up above the parapet, which is rare for a bank, others may follow. So it could become a very contentious issue for the Treasury and Rachel Reeves.
I mean, this is one we tend to agree on.
Good Lord.
Well, the whole point about a pension fund is to serve savers and retirees, to give them an income when they do. So what you want a pension fund to do is to invest in the best possible stocks and shares that they can do. Now, with Scottish Widows, they already do invest in Britain. Nothing wrong with investing in the UK if those are the funds that you want. So they invest, they've got £100 billion in their funds. They invest 7.6% of that. So they already do what Rachel Reeves wants them to do. The problem, I think, is the government have been really bad with pensions over the years. So, as an example, the mine workers' pension scheme, that was a huge scheme, and when British Coal was privatised, the government agreed to underwrite it if they could take 50% of any profit. over the years, the government took £4 billion out of mine workers' pockets. That's just been reversed by the Labour government. What the local government...
So no mine workers now.
Well, no, there aren't, but there are an awful lot of retirees who actually need the pensions. And the fact that this has been reversed and the Treasury no longer takes the money means that they'll get a boost in their pensions, and they're the ones who should have it. They were the ones who contributed. The local government pension scheme, Rachel Reeves wants to pull them all together to cut down admin costs. That's a good idea. There's all local government councils have these. They're individual ones. Sure. But when Sajid Javid was Business Secretary, he took the final say in where the investments would go. Nothing's happened from that, but it just was a very dodgy kind of thing for the government to decide. So the pensions are not there. There's £3 trillion worth of money in pension funds. Pensions are not there to give the government a bit of extra dosh so they can build a bridge.
Absolutely. And of course, the thing is, it's not as if they've got this money floating around. They'll have to come out of something to go into something else. And that it doesn't necessarily make sense. And being forced to do it, investment is not just about stock picking, it's also about timing. And if you actually are forced to do something in a particular time scale, it could be very detrimental to every pension.
And what stops her? Is this the end of the wedge? So first it's pension companies. What about oil companies next? Or insurance companies?
Well,
where does she go with this?
Exactly. I mean, it's forcing people to invest in Britain because she's so desperate to try and create some kind of growth when everything else she's doing, of course, prevents any growth. It's another example of Rachel Reeves way out of her depth.
Fascinating, fascinating. And if Piers is right, this could create a domino effect. That's going to blow another hole in her financial projections.
I mean, as I say, there's nothing wrong with investing in Britain. I mean, I think the pension fund should be encouraged to do that. But their priority has got to be the people they serve.
I agree. We've got time for one other story, chaps. What are you going to do?
Gerard Depardieu, the French actor, probably the biggest star in France. Now, in getting on, has been convicted of a sexual assault and been given an 18-month suspended sentence. I think he's quite lucky, but I think it's partly because he's such a big star. But he's a terrible monster, and he is. I think he divides opinion. Most people think he's a vulgar brute who behaves appallingly towards women, and actually not just to women, but all kinds of other people too. He played the mayor of Marseille in a very successful television series, very good actually. But the people of Marseille rather took against him because of his portrayal of the corrupt mayor. The trouble is, I think it was a bit too close to the bone. But he's also done terrible things. I mean, he's once on an aeroplane when they wouldn't let him go to the loo because the plane was landing. That's right. He went and peed on the floor of the aircraft. Really rather disgusting.
But on this particular thing, I think that what it does show, I mean, this happens to be France, but whoever you are, if you start abusing women, the law will catch up with you. And I think it's quite right in this case that it has done. We ought to say he has denied all the charges.
Of course, but he was found guilty.
But he has been found guilty of them. And so it's a whole string of people, sort of Jeffrey Epstein downwards, that we hear about. And I think that the culture everywhere is changing, where these people now find themselves in the dock.
Is that the end of his career?
Depardieu won't be on the state visit with Macron in July.
I think that's a very good point.
And it is the end of his career, yes. Yes, I mean, he hasn't been able to get work for the last few years.
Because this has been hanging over him.
Because this has been hanging over him. So now he's been convicted, the chances are no one's going to touch him.
Fascinating. Gentlemen, thanks for coming in.
Right, should we get some headlines now?
Should.
With Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you very much. The top stories. Police have arrested a man over suspected arson attacks on properties linked to the Prime Minister. The 21-year-old was arrested in the early hours of this morning on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life. The arrest follows a fire at the Prime Minister's private home in North London in the early hours of yesterday. On Sunday, emergency services were called to a small fire at the front door of a house converted into flats in Islington, a property also linked to the Prime Minister. One person was assisted to safety via an internal staircase by firefighters. Police are also looking at a car fire as part of that investigation. Counter-terrorism police are leading the probe and are treating the fires as suspicious and investigating whether they are linked. Kemi Badenoch has condemned these suspected arson attacks. US President Donald Trump is in Saudi Arabia for the first major diplomatic trip of his second term and has been greeted by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He'll visit Riyadh, Doha and Abu Dhabi, which will last throughout the week. The US leader wants to focus on big deals and investments, focusing more on economic deals than pressing regional security matters ranging from the war in Gaza to talks over Iran's nuclear program. The trip also comes after his officials in China agreed to slash tariffs in a de-escalation of their trade war. And Buckingham Palace has announced that the King is to host the French President on a state visit to the UK. Emmanuel Macron will visit from the 8th to the 10th of July. The palace has added the President and Mrs Macron will stay at Windsor Castle. The King and Queen paid a state visit to France in September of 2023, and the last state visit to the UK from France was in March 2008. Those are your latest headlines for now. More from me at midday.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3208 and €1.1898. The price of gold is currently £2,463.42 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,617 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Right, up at noon. Good afternoon, Britain, with Tom and Emily. All right, you two, what's going on? What's happening in your show today?
Well, I don't know if you've seen, but apparently more than 400 jihadis have returned to this country and haven't faced any kind of justice in this country. Now, this comes from a report from the Joint Committee on Human Rights headed up by Lord Alton. So we're going to be speaking to him. Because firstly, why are they being allowed to return to the UK? And then once they're here, why are they not facing any justice? It brings back the debate over Shamima Begum, doesn't it?
And where are they?
And where are they? Where are they living?
Yeah.
Apparently, we don't have any idea, according to this report, of how many Brits are out in Syria.
I wouldn't want one in my community.
Well, me neither. I mean, do we know how they got here as well? I mean, do some come via boats or...
Well, apparently this report seems to be saying that we don't have nearly enough data, not enough matching up of communications and different bodies and everything. Apparently, we have no idea of the specific number of Brits that have gone over to Syria and still remain there.
Well, unlike many countries, as we all know, anyone who's left the country knows, we don't count people out.
True, yeah.
We only count people who come in. So if someone leaves the country, is that stored on some sort of state computer somewhere? No, it's not. It means that every single year we have revised migration statistics that can move by hundreds of thousands, because the number of people who leave the country, net emigration, is a guesswork by the ONS. So we can see that net inward migration, i.e. outward migration, inward migration minus outward migration, can shift massively, because we count people who come in, but we don't count people who come out. So that's difficult to track people who travel to some area of intense terror activity, but also, frankly, difficult for just regular migration statistics.
So these are people who could have been involved in terror attacks, genocide, all sorts of atrocities. Just come back to the UK, God knows where they're living. So, yes, we're going to find out a little bit more about the situation. How many jihadis are actually living in this country?
Terrible.
Yeah, really.
Not facing justice.
Right, well, stay with us, because that's coming up at midday. Next, find out what Princess Kate says has been a sanctuary during her cancer treatment. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hi
there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following yesterday's thunderstorms in places, today's fine for most with warm sunny spells returning widely, although still the risk of scattered thunderstorms in a few spots because low pressure, although it's moving away, is still close to the southwest, and it's across parts of South Wales into Bristol, central southern England, and perhaps the southeast, where a zone of instability remains. Cloud will bubble up, some showers and active thunderstorms will form, again with lightning and hail, but these will be very hit and miss. For much of the country, it's simply warm and sunny with temperatures reaching the low to mid-20s. I think cooler on that northeast coast, particularly where we've got some persistent low cloud hugging the coast. And that really remains into the evening across parts of northern and northeast Scotland. One or two showers possibly over the Highlands and Grampians, but again, these will be hit and miss. For much of the rest of Scotland, it's a fine end to the day. Clear skies for Northern Ireland, for much of northern and central England, North Wales, where we saw some very lively storms on Monday, and East Anglia seeing plenty of fine weather as we end the day. Even through South Wales, central southern England, where we've got some potentially torrential showers forming, they disappear by midnight, and then it's clear skies for most, although that low cloud across northeast Scotland likely to drift inland to affect central and southern Scotland and northeast England. Temperatures dropping away, high single figures, low double figures for most. We start off Wednesday with some showery activity across parts of Cornwall, mainly towards the far southwest. That tends to fade away into the afternoon, although always the potential for one or two showers to bubble up. That's the exception. For much of the rest of the UK, it's another warm and sunny day, 23, 24 in the south, high teens further north.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Last year, nature has been my sanctuary.
No, I'm talking about me and Steve.
Oh, you're Steve?
Well, this is the Princess of Wales. She's opened up about how nature has helped her heal throughout her cancer journey. Let's speak to our editor-in-chief at Majesty magazine, Ingrid Seward. Beautiful pictures, I must say.
Those films she does are rather charming.
Yeah, she's beautiful, though, isn't she, Kate? It's just...
Oh, stunning.
She's just such a stunning woman. Ingrid, tell us more about this.
Well, it was filmed, I think, during their recent visit to the Scottish Islands. And, of course, they've always had a huge affinity with Scotland because that's where they met. And they used to go and stay in one of... a little house that William and Harry shared, actually, at the time, or just on the Balmoral estate near the castle. Well, it wasn't that near the castle. It was very discreet. And one day I went up a little deer track and had a peek in, and it was beautifully decorated, but empty, obviously, or else I wouldn't have been able to look. So their affinity with Scotland is huge, and I think what I understand that Catherine is trying to do is she's thanking everyone, everything for the greatness of nature that helped her heal and encouraging people to try and do the same. But I think the only place where she's gone a bit wrong is that, of course, not that many people have that kind of access to nature. I think she's, ever since she was a child, she's had a garden. Except in the very early years. So she's always been able to associate with nature.
But of course, if you're living in a tower block in Peckham in South London, you may...
Well, I was going to say that, Andrew, but I thought I'd better not.
Yeah, well, but it's right, though, isn't it? I mean, because, I remember during lockdown thinking how terrible it must be to be stuck, perhaps with a couple of kids on a tower block in one of our inner cities. Terrible. And do you think... So the film she's made is rather lovely, but do you think people might feel it's as slightly insensitive?
I mean, people really don't want to criticise Catherine, do they? I mean, none of us do, because she's so gorgeous and she's been through so much. But I think, I wouldn't say insensitive, I'd say just a little bit...
Naive, perhaps?
Protected, a little bit naive, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
But we all love to see it, and here we are talking about it. But I think it is a little naive to think that everyone has a beautiful wood that they can go to, or a beautiful holiday in Scotland that they can have.
She did look stunning, didn't she?
She always looks stunning, doesn't she? She always looks amazing. Ingrid, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
Thank you. Lovely to see you both again.
Great to talk to you. Now, up next, should the NHS remotely weigh your children as they try to tackle being too fat? But first, we know if you're looking for that elusive holiday sun, here's the forecast.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Some heavy showers through this week over central parts of the Mediterranean, affecting Sicily, Sardinia, and also at times the Balearics. Things have cooled off a little bit across Greece and Turkey. The wind's coming down from the north, but plenty of fine spring sunshine over the Greek islands through Wednesday. There are the showers drifting northwards, affecting Sardinia, and increasingly over Mallorca and Minorca. Plenty of sunshine, though, for the Canaries. Sunny skies, too, across the Algarve. Heavy showers inland across northern Spain should ease later this week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
From the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
So the NHS is rolling out what they call spy scales, which remotely monitor children at home so they can get in touch, the medics, if they're putting on too much weight.
Well, joining us now is pharmacist Thoran Govind. Thoran, this sounds ridiculous. It sounds like a gimmick. What is it all about?
Well, under 750 million children and young people are estimated to be obese by the year 2050. So clearly there is under 750 million by 2050, all over the world. So we need to take some action, and we need to think about...
What are we doing to these kids?
Well, the people in the other countries, though, they're not really going to be on this scheme, though.
They're not going to be on this scheme, but globally we've got a global problem when it comes to obesity. And what is planned for this is some scales which are in children's homes and with the permission of their parents, and they are going to be checking their weight and offering words of encouragement and advice via an app. But do you remember when you were at school and they used to line you all up and they'd check your weight and shout it out in front of everyone? The children won't be able to see how much they actually weigh. So I think this...
Does it defeat the object?
They can see their fat.
No, well, they can't see the actual weight on the scales.
But they can see that they're fat.
Well, they will be able to see that they've got a problem, but I do think that this is of some benefit, because I remember some really, troubling things that happened for young people when they were put through that at school, effectively told, you're fat. I don't think that's the way we go forward with this. I think we have...
If someone's overweight, look, I mean, it could be like my car. If I didn't realise I've got a new car, and it makes noises if you near something, it goes beep, 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 and it goes and it goes alert, alert, collision, and all this thing. I mean, because they could get on the scales and it could make all sorts of noises.
Well, I think we need to understand that mental health can play into weight. We know that those who are deprived are more likely to be in deprived areas, are more likely to be obese. So we've got to give parents as much support as we can with this.
But why aren't parents doing this in the first place, Thoran? What's happened? I mean, you in the years you've been working in the NHS, parents seem to be abrogating their responsibility and saying it's up to somebody else to sort out their children.
I think there's just a lot of screen time as well, so sometimes it can be easier to have a child looking at a screen than having those conversations. Also, cooking and thinking about how we get families together. We don't really do that in the same way anymore. People are more likely to be eating their food whilst looking at something on a screen.
A lot of those parents are fat themselves, and so it's sort of, you see the parent and you see the child saying, they're eating the same stuff. But look, this is a bit absurd, though, isn't it? Isn't in a place where we need to be spending money on really seriously helping people, will this be of any sort of realistic benefit? Something that tells a doctor that then comes to tell you that you're fat is literally putting an intermediary in the way of just telling you something that is quite obvious.
We need to think about the long-term implications of obesity. So that's type 2 diabetes. It impacts every organ in our body. So we need to be getting these messages through to children. And if this is another way in our armour, again, you will have been hearing recently as well about them looking into weight loss jabs for children. Now, I want that to be a last resort. I want us to be thinking about every single thing we can do to support children in their own homes. And I think that's a positive of this scheme, because you're not asking anyone to go out. You're taking it to them. You're taking the intervention to them.
Just to come back to the weight loss jabs things. Okay, so we don't know what the long-term effect will be of these weight loss jabs, especially if you start them in young people. So might you not end up stacking more problems? So there may be kidney issues, liver issues, other sort of issues that then become as a result of taking these things.
So with weight loss jabs at the moment, we don't give them routinely to anyone who's not an adult in this country. And we know that the NHS is prescribing, there's about 1 million on these weight loss jabs for adults at the moment. What we need to make sure is, and even with what the studies they have done, that's been with interventions and with a lot of behavioural support, which brings me straight back to this. We need to make sure we're giving these children and their parents as much intervention and encouragement and everything that isn't medication, actually, because what we're looking at with these jabs is actually the BMI of 40 or over is what they've been looking at in some of these trials. A child who has a BMI of over 40 or over, that's it's such an incredible change to your life. You can't go through...
Standard BMI,
standard BMI for us would be between,
19 to 25.
Exactly. But with children are growing as well, so we need to make sure we're having a healthy conversation about BMI, because it's not always going to be completely accurate for a growing child.
And if you don't get them early, Thorin,
exactly.
is that the problem?
Yeah.
You need to get these kids early.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise they could be carrying this weight with them for years and years.
Absolutely.
With all the ensuing health problems you then get.
Exactly.
When parents perhaps come in with an overweight child to your pharmacy, do you have that conversation?
I try and have it. So we have got a private consultation room.
Right.
I think having those conversations where that child is there with their parent and they know there is someone in the community who they can go and talk to about these issues is so powerful, because we are that person they can come back to, weekly, monthly, and we're not just providing advice on medication. We're talking about alcohol. We're talking about weight. We're talking about smoking. And I don't want us to think of medications as a fix-all for everything. We've got to look at all the other things in our lifestyle as well.
Absolutely.
Well, to me, this sounds like a complete gimmick, and I just can't see why.
But we love talking to you.
It's great.
Thorin Gobbin, who is our favourite pharmacist, and thanks for coming into the studio. She's getting married soon.
Yeah,
aren't you?
Probably. Congratulations.
I am very excited. Very excited.
Yeah,
very exciting.
Beautiful.
Well, that's it from Britain's Newsroom. It's been a joy to be with you, Nana.
It has been a joy. Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you to you for watching as well.
Yeah.
Stay with us. Loads more still to come here on GB News.
Up next, Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily, and I'll be with you tomorrow.
I won't.
Miriam Cates.
One man arrested following 3 separate fires breaking out at property belonging to the Prime Minister. We'll have the very latest on that investigation.
We will indeed, and a new government report reveals that over 400 ISIS jihadis have returned to this country and faced absolutely no justice. Should they have been allowed to return to this country in the first place, and why haven't they faced any justice at all? That's next.
All to come after your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another day where most places will be fine and sunny. But like yesterday, we are expecting a few heavy showers and even the odd thunderstorm to break out this afternoon. It is quite cloudy around some of the coasts across northern and eastern Scotland. That could stick around for a good chunk of the day. For most places, it's a fine blue sky kind of morning. By late morning into the early afternoon, this zone here could well be seeing some heavy and perhaps even thundery showers as far east as Sussex. The heaviest ones most likely South Wales, around Bristol, Gloucestershire and Somerset. But they'll be very hit and miss, many places avoiding them. Feeling warmer in the sunshine with temperatures getting into the low 20s, perhaps into the mid-20s in 1 or 2 locations. As I said, these showers will be hit and miss, but where they do occur, they could drop a lot of rain in a short space of time. A lot of spray and surface water in parts of the M4 and the M5 potentially for this evening's rush hour. The vast majority dry, fine, sunny and pretty warm. Always cooler on some of these coasts and particularly fresh if this mist and low cloud does stick around, as it could do on some of the coasts across northeastern Scotland. Temperatures may struggle to get much above 11 or 12 Celsius. And it's likely to move back inland through this evening as well. The showers in the southwest, well, they should fade away. Still a possibility of 1 or 2 over the Channel Islands. They could just return north back into parts of Devon and Cornwall through the early hours. But most of us having a dry night, temperatures dipping down into single digits for the vast majority. And that mist and low clouds still around on Wednesday, perhaps a little further inland over parts of northern England tomorrow morning, gradually burning back to the coast. The chance of 1 or 2 showers for Devon and Cornwall, the Isles of Scilly early doors, but again, they should scoot away. And for most places, it's another cracking day tomorrow. Plenty of sunshine, fine conditions. Again, that breeze picking up, so that'll keep things fresh on some North Sea coasts, but warm enough where we see some sunshine over many central and western parts.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
What does it feel like to be a Great British Giveaway winner?
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
Yes, that is fantastic.
You know, you have no idea how much I needed it. Oh my goodness. That's wonderful.